Nobody from my family came to my birthday, not even my daughter or sister, who ditched me for a car purchase party at the in-laws, where champagne flowed like a river while I sat alone with unlit candles. But when I cut the cake, my phone lit up with a message from my daughter. "We need to talk, now," followed by 63 missed calls. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. My fist slammed against the dining table with a sharp crack that sent the decorative birthday napkins scattering across the polished wood. The phone in my other hand showed the same mocking message. No new messages. 100 times I'd checked, maybe more. The birthday cake sat in the center of the table like a monument to my foolish hope that this year would be different. 70 candles waited to be lit, their wax tips perfectly straight, just like everything else I'd prepared. The china plates gleamed under the overhead light. The cloth napkins were folded into neat triangles. My best blue button-down shirt was pressed and tucked, my hair combed back with the same care I'd taken getting ready for church 40 years ago. I walked to the kitchen, checking the oven for the third time. The roast was still warm, wrapped in foil, slowly drying out. In the living room, I pressed my face against the window and stared down at the empty parking spaces below. Not a single car that belonged to family. The jazz music from my old radio sounded hollow now, echoing off bare walls instead of filling a room full of laughter. Back at the table, I lowered the volume and checked my phone again. No calls, no texts, no voicemails. The silence pressed against my eardrums like water. The phone rang sharp and sudden, cutting through the quiet. I lunged for it, hope flooding my chest. "Hello? Mr. Hart, this is Mrs. Patterson from next door." Her voice carried concern, but also curiosity. "I heard the music earlier and wondered if everything was all right with your party." I straightened a fork that was already perfectly aligned. "Oh, yes, everything's fine. I haven't seen any guests arrive yet. Are they running late?" The words stuck in my throat. How do you explain to a neighbor that your own family forgot you exist? "They should be here soon." "Well, if you need anything..." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. That's very kind." After she hung up, I sat staring at my contact list. Julie's name glowed at the top, followed by her husband Silas, then my sister, Christine. People who should have been here an hour and 45 minutes ago. People who should have called. I touched my wedding ring, turning it slowly around my finger. Margaret would have made sure everyone remembered. She would have called them herself, reminded them twice, maybe even driven to their houses to drag them here personally. But Margaret was gone, and I was sitting alone at a table set for 6, listening to jazz music that nobody else would hear. The cake's frosting had started to form a thin skin in the dry air. The candles waited, unlit, like tiny soldiers standing guard over my disappointment. My hand hovered over Julie's number. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe there was an emergency, or traffic, or some perfectly reasonable excuse that would make this whole evening make sense again. I pressed call and waited for my daughter's voice to fill the empty apartment. 3 rings, 4. Maybe she really was in trouble. Maybe, "Daddy, oh my gosh, perfect timing." Julie's voice burst through the speaker, bright and breathless with excitement. "You'll never guess what just happened. Silas surprised me with the most incredible birthday gift." I gripped the phone tighter. "Julie, it's 6 o'clock. I've been waiting." "A BMW, can you believe it? The new X7, the one I showed you in that magazine. $80,000. We're at Gus and Mary's right now, and everyone is just dying to see it. The leather is this gorgeous cream color, and it has heated massage seats and..." "Julie!" My voice came out harder than I'd intended. "Today is my birthday." Silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. Oh, Daddy, I'm so sorry. But you understand, right? This is huge for us. Gus and Mary invited all their wealthy friends over to celebrate, and there's champagne, and they hired this amazing jazz band. And there's even a photographer here from some society magazine. This is exactly the kind of event that could really help Silas's career. I loosened my collar with my free hand. The apartment suddenly felt too small, too warm. "I reminded you last week. I told you I was cooking dinner. I know, and I felt terrible about it all day. But Daddy, you have to see the big picture here. These people, they're not just wealthy, they're connected. Do you know what it means to be accepted by the Evanston Country Club crowd? This could change everything for us." Through the phone, I could hear laughter in the background, the clink of crystal glasses, the sound of success that apparently mattered more than keeping promises to family. The valet actually complimented Silas on his choice of wife, Julie continued, her voice getting more animated. And Mary introduced me to the mayor's wife. Can you imagine me talking to the mayor's wife like we're equals? I stared at the birthday cake. The number 7 had started to lean slightly to the left. So you're not coming. Oh, Daddy, don't sound like that. You know how important this is? We're finally fitting in with the right people. You understand what that means for our future, don't you? For the kids' future? The dial tone buzzed in my ear before I could answer. She'd hung up without saying goodbye, without wishing me happy birthday, without even asking how I was feeling on the day I turned 70 years old. I sat there holding the dead phone, listening to the mechanical buzz that seemed to match the hollow feeling spreading through my chest. The jazz music played on, but it sounded different now, lonelier, like background music for a movie about disappointment. My throat felt dry. The cake looked smaller somehow, insignificant, like something a child might make with Play-Doh. I set the phone down carefully on the table and stared at Christine's number. My sister wouldn't abandon me. She couldn't. But as I sat there in the silence, Julie's words echoed in my head. You understand, right, Daddy? The terrible thing was, I was beginning to understand perfectly. I walked to my armchair in the living room, my legs feeling heavier than they had all day. The family photos on the side table caught the lamplight, their silver frames gleaming like tiny accusations. I picked up the largest one, Julie's wedding day, 5 years ago. In the picture, she looked radiant in her white dress, her arm linked through mine as I walked her down the aisle. I remembered that morning clearly, how proud I'd felt, how perfect everything seemed. What I remembered even more clearly was the check I'd written 2 weeks before, $15,000 to help pay for her dream wedding. I traced her face in the photo with my arthritic finger. The smile she wore that day was genuine, filled with love and gratitude. Not like the dismissive tone I'd just heard on the phone, the voice of someone who saw me as an inconvenience rather than the man who'd raised her alone after her mother died. Setting the wedding photo aside, I closed my eyes and let myself remember the phone call from 3 years ago. Julie's voice had been different then, panicked, desperate. They needed $30,000 for a house down payment, she'd said. The bank required it immediately, or they'd lose their dream home. I could still picture myself at First National the next morning, sitting across from the loan officer as I depleted my retirement account. The manager had asked if I was sure, had warned me about the penalties for early withdrawal, but I'd signed the papers without hesitation. It's for my daughter, I'd told him, as if that explained everything. 2 months later, another call. The car needed major repairs, $3,000 she didn't have. Last spring, an emergency with credit card debt, $8,000 that vanished into the black hole of her lifestyle. Each time, I'd transferred the money without question, without asking for repayment, without even asking for a promise that it wouldn't happen again. I picked up the photo of Margaret from our 40th anniversary dinner. Her kind eyes seemed to look right through me, asking the question I'd been avoiding. What would she think of our daughter now? Margaret had always been the practical one, the one who'd taught Julie about responsibility and consequences. If she were here, would Julie have turned out different? Setting Margaret's photo face down, I began calculating in my head. Engineers' habits die hard, and numbers don't lie. $15,000 for the wedding, $30,000 for the house, $3,000 for the car, $8,000 for debt. Smaller amounts over the years, $1,000 here, $2,000 there. Christmas gifts that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, over $100,000, more than my annual pension, more than some people made in 2 years of working. And tonight, the woman who'd received every penny of that generosity couldn't spare 3 hours to have dinner with her 70-year-old father. She was too busy impressing strangers with her $80,000 car, a car that cost almost as much as everything I'd given her combined. I reached for the phone again, then stopped. My hand trembled slightly as I looked at Christine's number. My sister had always been different from Julie, more thoughtful, more considerate. She'd never asked me for money, never made me feel like an ATM with legs. But as I sat there in my empty apartment, surrounded by photos of people who should have been here, a cold thought crept into my mind. What if she lies to me too? The birthday cake waited in the dining room, its candles still unlit, still waiting for wishes that might never be made. Outside, the sun was setting over Chicago, painting my windows orange with the last light of my 70th birthday. I dialed Christine's number and held my breath. Christine had always been the reliable one. The thought comforted me as I pressed her number, settling deeper into my armchair. My reading glasses slipped down my nose as I squinted at the phone screen, my arthritic fingers moving slowly across the buttons. Outside, the evening light was fading to purple, casting long shadows across my living room. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Eldon? Oh, honey, I'm so glad you called." Her voice sounded strained, slightly breathless. Different from Julie's bright cheerfulness, but warm enough to ease some of the tension in my shoulders. "I was hoping you'd join me for dinner tonight. It's my birthday, you know." Silence stretched between us, and I could hear something in the background. Was that music? "Oh, Eldon, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot, and now—" Her voice cracked. "I can't leave Allison. She's burning up with fever, 102 degrees. The pediatrician thinks it might be strep throat." My chest tightened with immediate concern. 8-year-old Allison, with her gap-toothed smile and crayon drawings of stick figures. Just last month she'd visited, bringing me a picture of our family, where I was drawn as tall as a tree. "Is she in the hospital?" No, we're at home, but I took her to urgent care this afternoon, and they said to watch her closely. She's been sleeping on and off, but when she's awake, she's so miserable." Christine's voice wavered with what sounded like genuine worry. "I've been giving her medicine every 4 hours, and I just can't leave her side." "Of course not." The birthday disappointment melted away, replaced by grandfatherly concern. "Do you need anything? Money for the doctor visit? I could—" "You're so sweet, but we're managing. I just feel terrible about missing your birthday." The little one who had visited just last month, bringing crayon drawings of stick figure families and gap-toothed smiles, was suffering somewhere while I sat here feeling sorry for myself. "Don't you worry about that for 1 second, I said firmly. "Allison comes first, always." "How long has she been sick?" "Since this morning. Her temperature spiked around noon, and she started complaining that her throat hurt to swallow. You know how brave she usually is, but she's been crying on and off all day." I found myself nodding, picturing the little girl who never complained about scraped knees or bruised feelings. If Allison was crying, she must be truly miserable. "Keep giving her fluids. Popsicles helped when Julie was little." "I'll try that. Thank you, Eldon. You're always so understanding." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, feeling proud of myself for being the kind of grandfather who put family needs before personal disappointments. At least one family emergency was real, I thought with satisfaction. At least Christine still had her priorities straight. Time passed slowly in the quiet apartment. The birthday cake waited in the dining room like a patient monument to my solitude. Half an hour later, restlessness drove me from my chair to the computer desk in the corner of the living room. The old laptop wheezed to life, its fan humming against the evening silence. I'd gotten into the habit of checking Facebook before bed, reading updates from neighbors, seeing photos from people I'd worked with years ago, searching for some connection to the world beyond these 4 walls. The Wi-Fi loaded slowly, as always. I scrolled past Mrs. Patterson's cat photos and a neighbor's complaint about parking, looking for anything to distract me from the echo of birthday songs that would never be sung. Christine's post appeared near the top of my feed, posted 2 hours ago. The timestamp made me pause. 5:30 p.m., right around the time we'd been talking about Allison's fever. The photo stopped my breath completely. Christine stood in an elegant party setting, wearing a navy evening dress I'd never seen before. Professional makeup highlighted her smile as she held a champagne glass, surrounded by well-dressed people in what looked like an expensive restaurant. Soft lighting suggested a professional photographer had captured the moment, but it was the background that made my hands shake. There, dancing with a group of children near a decorated dessert table, was Allison, healthy, laughing, spinning in a little party dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her cheeks glowed pink with excitement, not fever. Her bright smile showed no sign of the throat pain that supposedly made swallowing impossible. I leaned closer to the screen, adjusting my glasses, zooming in on the photo. The timestamp was unmistakable, posted at 5:30 p.m., exactly 30 minutes before Christine had called me with her tearful story about emergency doctor visits and sleepless worry. My finger trembled as I scrolled through the comments below the photo. "Beautiful family celebration," wrote someone named Catherine. "Allison looks so grown up," added another. "What a lovely evening for a special birthday." A special birthday. Someone else's special birthday, apparently. Someone worth dressing up for. worth hiring a photographer for, worth bringing healthy children to celebrate. The BMW in the corner of one photo looked familiar. The same cream leather interior Julie had gushed about just an hour ago. The same party. The same choice. While I had worried about my granddaughter's fever, she had been dancing. While Christine had described sleepless hours of caregiving, she had been posing for professional photographs. While I had praised her for putting family first, she had been putting the same wealthy connections before our relationship that Julie had chosen. Both daughters of my family, blood and marriage, had looked me in the eye today and lied without hesitation. Both had chosen social advancement over simple human decency. I closed the laptop, but continued staring at the black screen, my reflection ghostly in its surface. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls pressing closer with each breath. Tomorrow I would call and congratulate Christine on the lovely party photos. I would let her know that I'd seen them. But tonight, I sat in the growing darkness and began to understand exactly how my family saw me. Anger drove me to the kitchen, where I opened the cabinet above the refrigerator and pulled down the bottle of whiskey Margaret had given me for our last anniversary. My hands shook slightly as I poured 2 fingers into a clean glass, the amber liquid catching the light from the overhead fixture. The first sip burned, but it also brought clarity. The smell triggered memories I'd been trying to forget for years. Uncomfortable social events where I'd felt like an outsider in my own family's life. Julie and Silas's wedding reception 5 years ago. The country club in Evanston that cost more per plate than I spent on groceries in a month. I'd worn my best suit, the navy one I'd bought for Margaret's funeral, and tried to make conversation with the Bradley family's circle of friends. Gus Bradley had looked at me over his martini glass when someone mentioned my engineering background. Engineering, he'd said with that particular tone rich people use when they're being polite about something they consider beneath them. How wonderfully practical. Mary Bradley had been worse in her subtle way. "We summer in the Hamptons," she'd told me while we waited for the bride and groom's first dance. Such a peaceful escape from the city. "Where do you like to vacation, Eldon?" I'd mentioned the cabin Margaret and I used to rent in Wisconsin and watched her expression shift to the kind of smile people wear when they're trying not to laugh. "Oh, how nice. Some people are comfortable with more modest expectations." Even then, I'd recognized the careful distance they maintained. I was Julie's father, so they had to include me. But they made sure I understood the boundaries. My pension and savings account didn't buy entrance to their world. My engineering degree from a state university didn't impress people who measured worth by stock portfolios and trust funds. The whiskey warmed my chest as I remembered the house hunting incident 2 years later. Julie and Silas had found a modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, and I'd been proud to help with the down payment. But when Gus and Mary saw the listing, their disapproval had been swift and surgical. "That neighborhood is so..." Mary had paused, choosing her words carefully. "Middle class." Gus had been more direct with his passive-aggressive offer. "We could just buy them something more suitable, something that reflects the family's position." They'd made me understand that my $30,000 came with the smell of ordinary people on it. Money earned by working for wages instead of inherited or invested. Money that couldn't buy entrance to country clubs or summer homes. Now, as I stood in my kitchen holding my dead wife's anniversary gift, I understood what tonight had really been about. Julie hadn't chosen the BMW party over my birthday. She'd chosen the world she was desperate to belong to over the world she came from. Christine hadn't lied to spare my feelings. She'd lied because admitting she was at the same party would have revealed her own social climbing. I was an embarrassment to them, a reminder of modest backgrounds and middle-class values that they wanted to escape. They couldn't introduce me to their wealthy friends without explaining that I lived in a pension-funded apartment, drove a 12-year-old Honda, and shopped with coupons. Setting the empty glass on the counter, I walked back to the dining room and looked at my birthday cake. 70 candles waiting to be lit. 70 years of working hard and playing by the rules and believing that family mattered more than money. Next year, I wouldn't be alone on my birthday. But it wouldn't be because my family had learned to value me. It would be because I'd learned to value myself differently. The whiskey glass went into the sink with a soft clink, and I retrieved my finest china plate from the cabinet, the wedding pattern Margaret had chosen 40 years ago. The silver cake knife came next, a gift from our wedding that had cut through decades of birthday celebrations when our home had been full of laughter instead of silence. Back in the dining room, I lit the candles on my cake with deliberate ceremony. Each flame caught slowly, casting dancing shadows on the walls as 70 tiny lights illuminated the room. The numbers 7 and 0 stood proud in the center, wax already beginning to drip onto the white frosting. If my family wouldn't celebrate with me, I would celebrate myself, with proper dignity. I carried the cake to the kitchen and set it on the counter, then measured a perfect slice with the precision my engineering mind demanded. The knife sliced through layers of vanilla cake and buttercream, the same recipe Margaret had used for every family birthday. The sweet smell filled the small kitchen, mixing with the lingering scent of candle wax. Each bite tasted better than any family dinner I'd shared recently. No pretentious conversation about summer homes or investment portfolios. No subtle insults wrapped in polite smiles. Just me, my cake, and the satisfaction of claiming this moment for myself. My phone buzzed against the counter where I'd placed it face down. The sharp SMS tone cut through my peaceful moment like a blade through fabric. I ignored it and took another bite. The message could wait while I finished the birthday cake my family had been too busy to share. Whatever Julie wanted now, after choosing champagne parties over simple family dinners, could wait until I decided I was ready to hear it. The candles continued burning as I ate slowly, savoring each forkful. 70 years of life deserve better than rushed eating and constant interruptions. For once, I would take my time. But as I cleaned my plate and began washing the dishes, curiosity gnawed at me like a persistent ache. The phone lay silent now, its screen dark against the Formica countertop. What could be so urgent that Julie would text at nearly 8 o'clock on a Saturday night? I dried my hands on the dish towel and picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the power button. Outside, Chicago's evening sounds filtered through the kitchen window. Distant traffic, a siren somewhere across the city. The ordinary noise of a world continuing its business while I stood alone in my kitchen, holding the key to whatever new drama my daughter had invented. The sink was clean, the cake properly covered, the candles finally blown out. My 70-year celebration was complete, whether anyone else acknowledged it or not. Now I could face whatever fresh crisis required my immediate attention. Half an hour later, I settled into my living room armchair with the phone in my hands. The kitchen was spotless, the cake safely stored, and my birthday officially concluded. The apartment felt different now, quieter, but somehow more peaceful, as if I'd reclaimed something that belonged to me. I unlocked the phone, expecting to find Julie's typical impatient message, maybe a follow-up call or two demanding immediate response. Instead, the screen exploded with notifications that made me lean forward and adjust my reading glasses. 20 missed calls. 40. I kept scrolling, the numbers climbing higher as my phone struggled to load the complete list. 60. 63 missed calls in 30 minutes. My hands began to tremble as I separated the calls by contact. Julie's name appeared 47 times, starting 15 minutes after her text message and escalating to a call every 90 seconds. But Silas had joined the assault too. 16 calls from my son-in-law, whose voice I rarely heard, except at mandatory family gatherings. The phone's battery showed critically low. All that ringing had drained it nearly dead. I stood up too quickly, my heart skipping in that irregular way that had worried my doctor lately, and searched for the charger in the kitchen drawer. Something this extreme couldn't be another manipulation. Could it? As the phone plugged in and came back to life, I studied the call pattern with an engineer's eye for detail. The timing was methodical, Julie calling every minute or two, with Silas filling the gaps when she presumably couldn't dial fast enough. This level of persistence suggested genuine panic, not the calculated drama I'd witnessed earlier, but today had taught me that my family could lie with remarkable skill. Julie had sounded genuinely excited about her BMW surprise. Christine had perfectly mimicked a worried mother's voice while posing for party photographs. If they could fabricate stories that, convincingly, what was stopping them from manufacturing a crisis? I cleared my throat and positioned myself on the edge of my chair, preparing for whatever performance awaited me. My heart was beating faster now, both from the physical stress of shock and the emotional weight of knowing I could no longer trust my own family's words. 63 calls demanded an explanation. Whatever Julie had invented this time, it was big enough to risk exposing her earlier lies. That alone made me curious enough to call back. I selected Julie's number and waited for the inevitable drama to begin. Julie answered before the first ring finished. "Daddy, thank goodness you finally called back." Her voice was thick with tears, raw with what sounded like genuine hysteria. "I've been trying to reach you for hours." "What's wrong?" The urgency in her tone bypassed my newfound skepticism, hitting the paternal reflexes that 42 years of fatherhood had embedded deep in my bones. "There's been an accident." The words tumbled out between sobs. Silas and his parents, they were driving back from dinner in the BMW when a drunk driver ran a red light. They're all at Northwestern Memorial Hospital right now, and it's really bad, Daddy. My chest tightened. The same car they'd celebrated buying, the same vehicle that had been more important than my birthday dinner, had become an instrument of tragedy. "How bad? Are they conscious?" "Gus has internal bleeding and they're talking about emergency surgery. Mary has a skull fracture. She's unconscious in the ICU. And Silas..." Her voice broke completely. "The doctors say it's touch and go. They might not make it through the night." I gripped the arm of my chair so hard my knuckles went white. Despite everything that had happened today, despite all the lies and casual cruelty, I couldn't let my family face this alone. "I'm coming to the hospital right now." "Which floor are they on?" "No!" Julie's response came too quickly, too sharp. "No visitors allowed. COVID protocols are still in effect for ICU patients. Only immediate family, and even then, only Silas's wife can see them." Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed the feeling aside. People said strange things under extreme stress. What can I do? How can I help? "The insurance won't cover the experimental procedures the doctors are recommending. They need $75,000 by midnight tonight to start the treatment that could save them. The hospital has a specialist team on standby, but they won't begin without payment authorization." The number hit me like a physical blow. $75,000. Nearly everything I had left in savings after years of helping Julie with her various financial emergencies. "Julie, that's almost everything I have." "I know, Daddy, I know it's huge, but they're talking about life and death here. Every minute we wait makes their chances worse. The specialist said if we can get the money transferred tonight, they can start the procedures immediately." My mind raced through the mechanics. Wire transfers on weekend nights, banks closed, emergency procedures. Something felt wrong about the timeline, but Julie's sobs were growing more desperate. "Please, Daddy, I can't lose them. Silas is everything to me, and his parents, despite their faults, they're still family. I'll pay you back every penny, I swear, but right now, tonight, you're the only person who can save them." I found myself nodding, even though she couldn't see me. The engineer in me wanted to ask more questions, demand details, verify the story. But the father in me, the part that had always put family first, was already calculating how quickly I could access my accounts. "I'll figure out how to get the money," I heard myself saying. "I'll call you back within the hour with the transfer details." "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much. I'll text you the hospital's financial department information. And Daddy, I love you. We all love you so much." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in the silence of my empty apartment. $75,000 to save 3 lives. 3 people who had spent the day dismissing me as beneath their social status, who had lied and manipulated and treated me like an embarrassment. But family was family, even when they broke your heart. I set the phone down and walked to my bedroom to find my banking information, wondering why something about Julie's story felt like a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit together. The banking information could wait. Something about Julie's story gnawed at me like a splinter under skin, and 47 years of engineering had taught me to trust that feeling when details didn't align properly. I walked to my small home office, really just a corner of the living room with a desk and file cabinet, and turned on the brass desk lamp Margaret had given me for our anniversary. My engineering certificates hung on the wall above, reminders of a lifetime spent solving problems through methodical analysis rather than emotional reaction. Opening my notebook, I began writing down everything that had happened today, organizing the information the way I'd approach any complex problem. Timeline first: Julie's call at 6 p.m. about the BMW party. Christine's call at 6:30 p.m. about Allison's fever. Julie's emergency call at 8:20 p.m. about the accident. Too many convenient details, too specific, too urgent. I drew lines connecting the events, noting inconsistencies that my father's heart had overlooked, but my engineer's mind couldn't ignore. How did Julie know the exact cost of experimental surgery within hours of an accident? Why were no visitors allowed during a family emergency when hospitals typically encourage family support? Most importantly, why did every story end the same way? Eldon, we need your money. The pattern became clearer as I wrote. Each family member had constructed elaborate lies designed to prevent verification. Julie blocked me from the party by claiming it was impromptu. Christine blocked me from seeing Allison by claiming contagious illness. Now, Julie was blocking me from the hospital by citing visitor restrictions. They knew I lived alone. They knew I had no independent way to check with Gus and Mary Bradley. We'd never had that kind of relationship. They knew I would respond to family emergencies with my wallet open and my questions set aside. For years, Julie's financial crises had followed the same pattern: urgent need, emotional pressure, payment deadline, and no follow-up verification. The house down payment, the car repairs, the credit card debt. I'd never asked for receipts or proof because I trusted family to tell the truth. That trust had cost me over $100,000 and apparently earned me nothing but contempt. I tapped my pen against the notebook, making small dots that gradually formed a line as my certainty solidified. Tomorrow I would call Christine again, but not as the worried brother checking on a sick grandchild. I would call as the detective gathering evidence. Because if my family thought they could manipulate a 70-year-old widower indefinitely, they were about to learn something about engineering. The most catastrophic failures happen when you underestimate the load-bearing capacity of the foundation. I closed the notebook and prepared for tomorrow's investigation, wondering what other lies I would uncover once I started asking the right questions. Sunday morning brought restless energy that coffee couldn't settle. I'd spent the night planning instead of sleeping, my mind cycling through questions and strategies like an engine that wouldn't idle. By 9 o'clock, I was dressed and dialing Christine's number with my notebook open beside me. Eldon! Her voice carried the same guilt I'd heard yesterday, but now I recognized it for what it was. How are you feeling? I was worried about you after I saw your Facebook photos from the party. No preamble, no polite conversation, just the fact, delivered like a hammer strike. Silence stretched between us like a wire under tension. I can explain, she whispered finally. Allison wasn't really that sick, and when Julie called about this amazing opportunity to network with important people. Where are Gus and Mary Bradley today, Christine? They left for Paris this morning. It was planned months ago, a second honeymoon trip. But Eldon, you have to understand, the social connections at that party were Paris. I wrote the word in large letters, circling it twice. What time was their flight? 11:30, I think. Air France? But why does that matter when I hung up without saying goodbye and called a taxi? O'Hare Airport on Sunday morning bustled with travelers dragging wheeled suit bags and clutching coffee cups like lifelines. I paid the driver and walked toward the international terminal, the small binoculars from my engineering days tucked in my jacket pocket. The Air France departure board confirmed what Christine had inadvertently revealed. Flight 136 to Paris, departing at 11:30 a.m., currently boarding at gate M14. I positioned myself near a coffee shop with clear sightlines to the gate area and waited. At 11:15, I spotted them. Gus Bradley walked normally, no limp or signs of discomfort, pulling an expensive leather suitcase behind him. Mary followed, animated and laughing, her head turning to admire the duty-free shops. No bandages, no wheelchair, no concerned medical attendants. Just two wealthy travelers excited about their European vacation. Through the binoculars, I watched them hand their boarding passes to the gate agent with steady hands. Mary pointed at something in the departure lounge, and Gus nodded enthusiastically. They looked like people beginning a long-planned romantic getaway, not accident victims who had spent the night fighting for their lives in an ICU. As their plane pushed back from the gate, I sat in the observation area and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Not the hot anger of discovery, but the ice-clear certainty of a man who had seen enough evidence to reach an unshakable conclusion. My family had coordinated a complex web of lies designed to extract my life savings. Julie had escalated from simple manipulation to elaborate fraud, counting on my love and my isolation to prevent verification of her stories. In the taxi back to Lincoln Park, I began planning their consequences. Because if they thought a retired engineer was too old and too trusting to fight back, they were about to discover that some structures, when pushed too far, don't just bend, they collapse completely. Monday afternoon found me sitting in Millennium Park Cafe at a corner table, watching downtown Chicago bustle past the windows. I'd called Julie that morning with a simple message. I have the money, meet me at 2 o'clock. The desperation in her voice when she agreed had been almost pathetic. She arrived 15 minutes late, her face flushed from hurrying, designer purse clutched like a weapon. Daddy, thank goodness you could arrange everything so quickly. How much were you able to get? Sit down, Julie. I gestured to the chair across from me, noting how her eyes immediately went to the envelope beside my coffee cup. We need to talk. Is that the bank draft? 75,000? She leaned forward eagerly. The doctor said if we can get the payment processed today, they can start the procedures tonight. Every hour counts with internal bleeding. I smiled and opened the envelope, withdrawing not a bank draft, but printed photographs. These are interesting pictures, don't you think? Your sister posted them on Facebook. Her face went white as she recognized the party photos. Gus and Mary Bradley, healthy and celebrating. Allison dancing in the background. Christine raising a champagne glass in a toast. I can explain. Gus and Mary are in Paris, Julie. I watched them board their flight yesterday morning. Perfectly healthy. No internal bleeding, no skull fractures, no accident at all. The words hit her like physical blows. She tried to speak twice before managing. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Silas's family has expectations, and fitting in requires lying to your father about family emergencies, requires inventing car accidents and deathbed scenes to steal my retirement savings. I leaned back in my chair, feeling calmer than I had in years. I've spent the last 2 days learning exactly what kind of daughter I raised. You don't understand. Her voice rose enough to attract attention from neighboring tables. The Bradleys have standards. They judge everything by money and status. And if we don't keep up, so you decided to use me as your personal bank account for years. I placed the photos back in the envelope. The house down payment, the car repairs, the credit card debt, every sob story, every emergency, every time you called your poor old dad for help. Tears started flowing, but I recognized them now as weapons rather than genuine emotion. Daddy, please. You know I love you. This was theft, Julie. Fraud, elder abuse. The legal terms felt solid in my mouth, factual and final. You counted on my love for you to override my common sense. You used my loneliness as leverage to extract money for your social climbing. What are you saying? Her voice turned sharp, desperate. I'm saying I've changed my will. Every penny I would have left you is going to the Disabled American Veterans Charity instead. People who actually serve their country, rather than people who serve only themselves. She stared at me for long moments, her face cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally pure fury. You can't do this. That money is mine. I'm your daughter. You stopped being my daughter when you started seeing me as nothing but a source of income. I stood up, leaving the photos on the table. Don't call me again, Julie. Don't visit. Don't send cards or letters. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the childless widower I apparently always was. Her voice followed me as I walked away. You'll regret this. You need family. You can't survive alone. But I was already gone, stepping out into the Chicago afternoon with $75,000 still safely in my bank account, and the satisfaction of knowing that some bridges, once burned, create exactly the right amount of light to see clearly by. The veterans would put my money to honorable use, and I would spend my remaining years among people who understood the difference between loyalty and manipulation. Justice, I decided, felt remarkably like freedom. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.